Oh, we did have an incident. About 4:30. All hands on deck. What's that red light in front of us? Ansha said as she was helming. Everyone scrambled. Turned out it was the moon rising. And we didn't crash into it, so it's all good. Just before sunrise on Saturday morning, and after a relatively uneventful night. In fact, the main event of the evening was bringing out the head sail when we finally got some wind. We're pretty close to that zone that we expected to get wind, but we had enough quite early on to get the head sail out, which gave us just over an extra knot of speed, which really reduces our fuel consumption and increases our distance traveled. So right now we've got the sail out still. The wind's flopping between an extra 10 to 13 knots apparent, which is just enough to keep the sail full, and as I say, give us that extra knot and a bit. About over halfway now, so this time tomorrow we should be back in civilization and seeing lots of other traffic, and also be able to spot land. So today is just another day of the same as yesterday. Watch the miles go by and count the waves. Saturday evening, coming up to 7:30, we never did find that wind that was predicted to be happening for us. We're now in the channel between the northern tip of Sardinia and the southern tip of Corsica, and we're flying the French courtesy flag off the mast, because tonight we're going to be staying in Franceland. There's a little boat hole here which has got a free anchorage, and it's also very close to a refueling station, which means that if we can get in here tonight, it's a good place to rest up, and we'll do a couple of quick little fixes that we need to do tomorrow. Nothing big, and I'll explain about them tomorrow when we do them, and then we'll refuel tomorrow and head out onto the other side of the eastern side of Sardinia, and then head over to Italy and scoot down the western coast of Italy and onwards. So the plan is anchorage in around about an hour and 15 minutes from now. It's going to be fun finding an anchorage in the dark. My first time! Anyway, the crew are all happy because they've been fed.
That guy was optimistic, wasn't he? We thought that we would be able to get to the anchorage in Corsica early enough to drop anchor in the light, but by the time we got there it was too dark, and when we looked at the charts, the inlet looked a little bit too narrow for us to be tootling around trying to find an anchorage at night time. So we decided to pull the pin on that idea altogether, and we navigated in the dark through the Bouche de Bonifacio, which is very large and full of lots of lights and quite a few boats. And even though we wouldn't have decided to do that ourselves, it turned out to be a really good learning curve, because we got to really see what navigation actually is like in a real life situation over a long space of time. So we ended up coming a little bit south down the eastern coast of Sardinia, changed the flag back to an Italian flag, and we found a lovely little bay very close to Olbia, which is behind me, and we anchored here, and it's just been lovely. We got here about 3:30 in the morning, but we feel really proud that we've actually made it this far, and as soon as Baz gets the netting off the prop, we will make our way across over to Italy.
We're just about to leave Sardinia and hop across to mainland Italy, but when we arrived here at night and dropped anchor, Mike was up the front end and noticed this floating around the front end. This is some sort of fishing line, I would guess. He hooked it out and we pulled it away and it seemed to come away clean. But obviously the prudent thing to do is to have a visual inspection before we start the engine and bugger off again. So I've just done that, that's why I'm wet. And we've got some of this still wrapped around the prop. So it's wrapped around enough that I can't just get it on one breath. So I'm going to put my scuba gear on, make the job easy, and go down there and cut it away, and also just check around the rest of the hull and the keel to make sure there's nothing else wrapped around there. Fun in Sardinia with string. After I got this lot off the prop, I just did an inspection around the rest of the boat, and you can see where the bow thrusters are. They've got these little guards on the bow thruster to stop people putting hands in, I guess. And you can see that this is originally, we've sailed through it or motored through it, and this has originally got caught on the guards on the bow thruster, and then trailed back along the hull, and eventually got wrapped around the prop. So this is all the stuff that came off the prop. But she's clean now, she's all good. Got to put the gear away and head off to Italy. We're currently anchored up in Sardinia, on the east coast of Sardinia. If you'll remember, we mentioned that a couple of jobs needed doing when we anchored up. Nothing major, nothing big. The rudder stock quadrant was replaced while we were having the boat sorted out when we bought it in Murcia, with a brand new stainless steel custom made rudder stock quadrant. Well, on passage, the stresses and strains of the rudder and autopilot working together have caused one of the bolts to work a little bit loose. So we're just tightening those up now. So Mike's in the box doing the job now, and he's going to show me where they are, so when I need to do it again, I'll know what I'm looking at. If we look up, we can see the underside of our bimini and our solar array, and then we're down in the back bit here where the rudder stock comes through and up into this, and holding this thing is of course our brand new rudder stock quadrant that we had made. Well, you can see there's two bolts, and there are two corresponding bolts on this side as well. And then when we look on the other side here, you can see the two bolts here and two bolts there. So there's four on each side, and they're the ones that basically worn a little bit loose, and we tightened them all up. So that's all good now. Still had a good look around in here for the flux gate compass, but it's not in here, and we're still on the search for that. So whoever finds the flux gate compass first wins a free weekend in Greece. Yeah, it's great. Well, that's one job off the list, just retightening all the nuts and bolts on the rudder stock quadrant. Next job we're going to do is, because we've got, I'll go out here and tell you all about this, because it's easy to explain out here. Because we've got an in-mast furling main, there's what's called the in-haul and the out-haul. Now, obviously, the out-haul pulls the main out of the sail, and the in-haul pulls it back into the sail. Problem is, the in-haul and the out-haul lines both run back to exactly the same place there in the cockpit. So when you want to winch one in or out, and you need some tension on the other one, which you really do need for hauling in, especially hauling in a furling main, then you've got a problem of not having enough tension on the out haul while you're winding in the in haul on the winch. So we're going to move the out haul from this side over to the other side, so potentially then we've got access to both winches when we're bringing in and out the mainsail. It's going to make things easier, because as we found out in practice the last couple of days, it's not quite working well the way it's set up, so we're going to change all the lines. Oh, and where are we going to put it on the other side? The kicker, because the kicker really doesn't get used much and doesn't really need access to a winch, so it doesn't matter where the kicker goes. So we're bringing the kicker from that side over here, and we're taking the in haul from that side to that side. It'll all make sense, honestly. Won't it, Mike? Mike says, just shut the up and get on with the job, will ya? So we're going to release the kicker, because we're going to pull that line all the way out. And hopefully there's no stop or a figure eight on the end. No, there isn't. So Mike's going to pull that all the way through. Now the in haul's being removed from that side and the kicker is going through. So moving the kicker is as simple as that. Very easy. On the opposite side of the coin, there's a bit more involved in moving the in haul to the opposite side of the mast. It just means we've got to move the pulley from one side to the other. Almost like I bought one. Do you know what's missing? The confusion factor. We need to change the labels. I have a plan.
While the boys are doing their mechanical stuff, we girls are getting the galley organised so that it's more ergonomically designed, because the dishes and the food snacks and everything were basically put into the first available cupboards without much thought, and Elaine's had some good ideas about rearranging a few things so that it's easy to grab the dishes that are used more often, and put the snacks and things where they're not going to be needed as well. So it's going to be safer when we're cooking as well, when we're at passage. You should see what we've done. I never would have come up with any of this without Elaine's ideas. This is really good. So now the plates and bowls that we use a lot are handy. Pans. And we've also tidied up the spice cupboard. Snacks and things that don't get used as much are now in this cupboard further away. So thanks, Elaine.
You're welcome. It's been good doing it.
Yeah.
I feel like I've achieved something.
Yeah, it's cool.
One of the things we also noticed last night was the charge indicator light on the engine control panel in the helm station was glowing slightly red. It wasn't a full-on red, bright red. It was just slightly. In fact, we've never seen it before on any night passage. So what we've looked at is the engine, of course, because that's where, when the engine is on, we produce electricity through the alternator. And one of the first things we see is the alternator belt is quite slack. Oh wow, that moved a huge amount. That was just insane, the amount of movement there.
Still size?
The belt?
Yeah.
It's more than a quarter of a turn.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want too tight because it stretches them.
Yeah. So apart from the charge indicator light sort of like glowing gently, and obviously that alternator being as loose as it was, seems to be the major cause of that issue. We'll find out tonight or tomorrow night when we go overnight, whether it's fixed it or not. There's a few other issues that we need to have a look at in the engine. One is the fuel filter, and the other thing is just topping up the freshwater coolant to keep the engine cool. So we're going to put some of this in. We're going to need a funnel. After 2 nights of anchor in Sardinia, we are now heading further east to the Italian coast. So we're going to just hop straight over to a bunch of islands, sort of like down south of Italy, and then we'll hug the coast of Italy and head through the gap down there between Sicily and the boot of Italy. Once again, we are motoring because the wind is right on the nose. Go figure. So yeah, good day for getting out there and doing it. Hopefully once we get around this headland we might see a bit of a wind change. We'll hopefully get the sails out.
Next week on Sailing ABC, we arrive in Ponza, the largest of the Italian Pontine Islands, and after a day of rest, refueling and buying fresh food, we continue our journey south to the island of Lipari. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a thumbs up, it really helps us out, and subscribe and click the bell icon to make sure that you don't miss out on any future episodes of Sailing ABC. Thanks for watching, and take it easy.